may also use some of it as a reference point in the future if we ever need it as related to some of the issues that may be discussed today. So this meeting is now being recorded. All right, Sue, you have the floor.
Okay. The purpose of the Pacific Palisades Community Council shall be to 1, be a forum for the consideration of community issues. 2, be an advocate for Pacific Palisades to government and private agencies upon issues where there is broad community agreement, as reflected by 2/3 of the board members voting on any one of those issues at a PPCC meeting. And 3, assist other organizations in the Palisades which want help in accomplishing their objectives or projects which the PPCC determines to support.
Okay, thank you, Sue. I'm going to defer roll call because I don't want to lose Jeff. I know he's on a time schedule, so I'll do roll call as soon as we come back. But I will affirm that we do have quorum. I can see it on my attendee list as this is a Zoom meeting. And I'm going to approve the minutes too, so we don't forget on the other side. Everyone, the minutes were distributed. And then they were distributed again with just typographical errors corrected. Any edits or changes in the minutes?
Well, Mariam, I made a few typos after that, and I think you corrected that or said you were going to correct them. So
after the second one I sent?
I don't remember a second one. All I know is whatever I looked at, I came back from a trip and I looked at it briefly. And
those were made and sent out around 11 or 12 p.m., but I'll check. So I'm going to move to approve the minutes pending any typo corrections, which I think have already been made. But any other objections? Okay, so barring any objections, we're going to approve these minutes. Haldis. Oh, that's a yay, not an objection. Okay, so we're going to approve these minutes as distributed with the caveat that if there are typos, only typos, we will correct them and then upload them. Any objection? No, minutes are approved. Okay, we have quite a few people on the call, 50 people as we speak now. Jeff, there you are. I will highlight you for everyone. Jeff, everyone, is from CD11, the Office of Council Member Tracy Park. He is the Senior Planning Deputy at Tracy Park's office. Jeff Cow, ladies and gentlemen, who's been very, very helpful to us, been on a few phone calls with us already and helped us address some of our issues. He's going to just, introduce himself, make some remarks so you all know who he is and you can become familiar with him. He also has a couple of updates that he probably will share with us based on conversations we've had in the past on, I would say, 3 or 4 issues. But here you go, everyone. Jeff.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys for having me. Just wanted to give you guys some quick updates, and I'm going to be here to answer questions on all these updates, plus any other questions that you may have. So let's just jump right into it. The first thing I want to update you guys on is the ongoing Castellamare issue about the massive buildings, specifically the 4 big mega homes that are coming into Tremonto and Ravello. That's proposed by Crest Real Estate. We saw it go to the West LA APC on April 19th. The Area Planning Commission had some serious concerns about scale of the building, as well as kind of safety concerns about the stability of the hillside. And throughout the conversation, it was determined that although the homes that are proposed are super big and we would like to see them scale down, that the improvement of the hillside as a result of the homes being there is actually going to be a net benefit for the entire Castellamare area. And so in that sense, the council office does support the idea of homes being there, but we are concerned with the scale of the homes and just the, whether or not these homes need to be actually as big as they are. The council, the commission voted to continue the project, which signals to us that they're not ready to just straight up deny the project, that they want to work with the developer to come up with a project that is appropriate and suitable for the area. And so that's kind of where we're left off with the Tremonto Ravello 4 mega homes. In terms of when it's going to be going back to the APC, we anticipate that it's going to be sometime this summer, probably July. The developer has come back to our office in terms of showing us a revised design. it's no surprise that the revised design doesn't really include many decreases in the square footage of the home or the footprint of the home. And so our office is a little disappointed to see that, in terms of the homes themselves, they haven't decreased in size. The developer has confirmed that the stability of the hillside would be the same regardless of how big the homes were, because the council office was under the impression that, if you have a smaller home, then it would be less caissons, less piles, less impact onto the coastal hillside and of the mountain itself, of the hillside itself. But apparently, it's the amount of caissons and piles is kind of set, it's kind of fixed regardless of the size of the homes. And so after we kind of learned about that, although we're disappointed that the homes remain the size that they are, our main concern is the safety and stability of the hillside. They did propose additional improvements to the sidewalks and creating more space for I guess the right of way to happen in these streets. And so we're encouraged that this project overall will lead to a net benefit, but at the same time, out of scale homes is a constant issue that we're dealing with in this area. And so I just want to perhaps open up the conversation as to in terms of this project. I don't know whether we want to have questions now or do them at the end of my presentation.
At the end of your presentation. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's the first issue is the Castlemarre homes. And there was questions about whether or not this project needs to go through an EIR process. The state has really come out with many laws lately to help developers kind of do basically exemptions from EIRs or kind of equivalent EIRs where the impacts are studied, but the environmental impacts are studied without having to go through the EIR process, which requires public hearing and public input. And so, our office, although we would like to push for an EIR for any big projects, we do understand that with state laws that allow you to take advantage of the incentives that may allow for you to go get by without an EIR, we're not going to go against it at this time because these laws were in place to kind of create a streamlined process. That being said, though, we still want to address the concerns that are brought up by the community in terms of safety. With regard to this project specifically, the safety and stability created by this development is something that we would want, because the other option is this development doesn't happen and the hillside remains unstable, especially Ravello. How Ravello is incomplete right now. We really want to see that street complete. For the sake of everyone on the hillside. So it's a tough situation for our council office to be in, but I think the safety of our residents comes first. And so we may disagree with the developer about the size of the homes, but we're grateful that they're creating a more stable hillside. The second thing I want to bring up is kind of related. It's about the out of scale homes in the hillside, or specifically the non-hillside R1 coastal streets that can't be stopped because of a loophole in the zoning code. And so I've talked to Miriam Howard Robinson about some potential solutions to this problem. And any solution, there's several solutions that can come into place. The solutions basically boil down to creating more regulations or invoking more regulations into the area that control for height and floor area. We find that, in just reducing the FAR or reducing the height limitations, we can, just that alone can help kind of solve this kind of ongoing issue of out of scale homes in the hillside. What we're encountering though is issues with SB 8 and SB 330, which require us to do a balancing act. To kind of backtrack, when the state introduced SB 330 and SB 8, their intention was to really prevent local municipalities from creating laws that would kind of get in the way of housing production. And so with all these kind of housing laws coming out, the state was seeing kind of these smaller cities go rogue and creating kind of laws in terms of limiting FAR, limiting height, or limiting any sort of intensity increases in the area. And so the state really kind of set a law and said, as of January 1st, 2018 or something like that, this is where we set the line. And if you're going to add any sort of regulation that decreases the ability for the city to, or decreases the intensity of use or the intensity of capacity for land to be used for housing, then you have to accompany that with a sister ordinance that increases density in somewhere else in that neighborhood. So what that means is that if you're going to reduce, let's say, height in one neighborhood, the height limit in one neighborhood, you would essentially have to offset the loss of residential square foot area with that regulation, with a regulation that increases residential square foot potential. We know that this sounds really complicated. This balancing act, like, how much do we have to add in order to make up for what we subtract? These are questions that our city attorney's office is dealing with right now. And so there's a lot to happen in order for this law to actually come into play and to see it being implemented. But we're finding that, even things like implementing R1 variation zones, right? The state is asking for us to do a sister upzone to kind of offset the residential areas lost by the R1 variation zones. There are some kind of local laws that kind of bypass this need for balancing. If it's kind of environmentally related. So if it's environmental related, then we can argue that these are environmental regulations. They're not meant to decrease the potential for homes to be big, or they're not decreasing the floor area or the setbacks of a home. These setbacks are in place to kind of help protect access for wildlife, for instance, right? We can maybe use those arguments as a way of instituting new regulations that may help control the scale of homes. But if it becomes obvious that a regulation comes in, let's say, to increase setbacks or decrease FAR, we would need to kind of accompany that with a sister ordinance that increases density in another area. And so that's just something for you guys to think about. I know that this conversation is ongoing in your community about, okay, well, where can we upzone? Where can we add capacity, residential capacity, to be specific? And so normally this would require, if there is no land right now that's zoned for that upzoning, then that would be a conversation to have about where we can start rezoning these properties, or rezoning these areas to allow for more housing. Okay, I guess the next update I have is about Potrero Canyon. There's three parts of this project: the park, the bridge, and the trail. I think in terms of the park, there's ongoing conversations taking place about the improvements of the park. And so they kind of, right now, the park is being improved in line with the trail and the bridge. And so let me just give you a quick update on the bridge. It's currently in its pre-design phase. The city posted the task order solicitation to utilize a consultant to undertake the project approval and environmental documents, which is required for the pre-design phase. This solicitation was released on April 19th, and it's going to take a couple months to get a consultant on board, since they're providing a couple weeks for the interested consulting firms to submit proposals. The city is going to go through a selection process, which will require the board's approval. So, long story short, it's in the pre-design phase. They're looking for consultants. It's going to take some months to kind of get the consultant on board. And once that consultant's on board, then we can have a better idea of where the design phase is going to go. And also, at that point, we can start the environmental on the bridge. And there's an update from Senator Ben Allen's office. They have strongly encouraged the PPCC, you guys, to send their official position by the end of May, given that the project was requested by the community Senator Ben Allen's office has received strong support for the project, and they've been telling the community about the project for years. And so they're very excited to be on board with this project. Regarding the trail, the city is currently preparing a request for a consultant to begin the pre-design of the trail. So it's kind of in the same pre-design phase. And we're pending receipt of the funding for the project. Caltrans has agreed that they will assist the city with the encroachment permit because we're dealing with Caltrans land here. And they agreed to assist with the permit once we have an agreement to align the trail with our design. CAO's office is in the process of putting together a council report to accept this money and federal earmark dollars from the 2023 appropriations bill. We'll need to make this report through a council. And so, it requires us to do a bunch of motions and little bureaucratic tricks in order to get that money into our wallet. So that's nothing for you guys to worry about, but just kind of process related for you guys to know that the funding for this trail is kind of in place. BOE requested $3.4 million in the city's budget to cover this project cost. Congressmember Liu secured $1.15 million. And so BOE subsequently reduced their budget request to kind of cover that difference, just like about $2.3 million. The budget was not allocated this year. However, BOE has enough funds from other sources to begin the pre-conceptual design of the lateral trail. And so the trail is underway. And that's basically all the updates I have. And I just want to open this up to questions in case anyone has questions about anything I said or questions about anything that I didn't say.
Okay, Jeff, I thank you very much for those updates. You covered quite a few of the things that we've talked about through the months, and I appreciate it. The only thing that you don't have an update for that I want to note to everyone is that we had asked the council office to look into why those access trails between Enchanted and Lockman Lane had been blocked. And so that still doesn't have much to report, but I think your office is still looking into that and you will unearth. You touched upon a couple of important issues and you touched upon a couple of hot button issues. So I'm sure there are going to be some questions, but I just want everybody to know that I have a chair's updates item that will go over some of this stuff again. And I do want to also let you all know that Jake Ettinger from Senator Ben Allen's office is on the call, as is Rad Norozi. So they're here too, and I'm sure we will engage them in conversation at some point throughout this meeting. So I'm going to ask for questions in the order that I saw hands go up. That will be Chris, Cindy, Murray, Rob Weber, and Caroline Whitkoff. We'll start with those five and then we'll move on. So Chris, Cindy, Murray, Rob, and Caroline. Jeff, here you go. Chris, you've got the floor.
Jeff, thank you so much. I know a lot of this is very complicated and I've been following some of it with you and others, and I appreciate it. Just real quickly on the trail and the bridge. So the trail, as you know, and I assume your office knows, is required by the Coastal Commission. I'm glad to hear that it's going forward. That's wonderful. The bridge is not required yet by the Coastal Commission. So the bridge, what is required by the coastal permit, the current coastal permit, is a feasibility study. So I wonder if you could kind of give some sense of where that stands, whatever it consists of the feasibility study, where it stands, when it's expected to go to the Coastal Commission. That's number one. Number two, an application for a new coastal permit is also required for the bridge. And where does that stand, if it stands at all? I mean, that may come later, I understand. Those are just my questions for now. Thanks.
Yes, so the Department of Public Works is in charge of securing the CDP for the trail. And although we haven't followed up with, in terms of whether they've started that application or not, that's, public projects are always handled through Public Works, and the CDP process usually runs smoothly with, two public agencies working together. So I'm not concerned about the CDP. It's going to be applied for. We need a CDP to develop in the coast. And I doubt that, Public Works is going to try to skirt that process. But I can definitely look into it to see where it's at, maybe get a case number for you to start tracking it.
It's the portion where you want to raise your hand or not.
The other issue that you brought up was the feasibility study. And so The feasibility study, because we call it, the coastal permit calls it a feasibility study, but what VOE is calling it is a pre-design report, which functions as their feasibility study. So in essence, this kind of pre-design phase right now that VOE is going through encompasses the feasibility aspect that is required by the CDP, by the coastal permit. So when the pre-design report comes out, it will include a component of discussing feasibility of the project and also discussing alternatives for the bridge as well. So we expect those to be lumped together. When we asked VOE about this, there was a lot of confusion because of the term feasibility study, because how it's used in the CDP. But what VOE is calling it is a pre-design report. I've also heard project study report, project development support. So they call it different things, but it all kind of comes down to this idea of a preliminary study that VOE is conducting right now with the consultant.
Okay, so Cindy Simon is up next. I just want to make clear that we have two projects that it just so happens they're simultaneously happening at the moment, both of which offer coastal access to Potrero Canyon Park. One of them is the trail. That, as you said, money's been procured by Senator Ben Allen, but the city asked for a budget item in the mayor's budget. They didn't get it. I do understand from Gabby, though, that they have been able to secure $168,000. That might be what you were talking about. $168,000 to go ahead and do some pre-design phase kind of unearthing to figure out what that trail ultimately would look like. Because I think we've all assumed that that trail would always be very easy to sort of lay down at the toe of the canyon, and it might not be the case. So that's one set of information that's coming to the community. The second set of information, and again, just like Chris said, that trail already has Coastal Commission approval and is a required part of the park. The second thing that's kind of happening at the same time, and I don't know that the community expected it to, is the bridge. The bridge has $11 million that's already been remitted to the city. It's in the city's budget. That $11 million line item is already there. $175,000 was asked by BOE to do this quote unquote feasibility study, what they're now calling the pre-design report. That's already been given to them and they're getting started on that pre-design report. They put out, I want to call it an RFP, but it's not. They put out a call for consultants. And Jake will probably tell us they have a timeline of when they think they're going to get that consultant, bring them on board, get the feasibility study, bring it to the community. We're talking about a 9-year plan. So I just want to make sure everybody understands we're talking about two different methods of coastal access, one of which has Coastal Commission approval, not enough money, one of which has no Coastal Commission approval, but a good amount of money in the bank. Okay, Cindy, Murray, Rob, Caroline.
Did you say Cindy Simon or Cindy Young?
Cindy Simon.
Oh, okay.
You're muted, Cindy Simon.
Thank you, Rob.
Apologize. I wanted to make a comment about a statement that you made, Jeff, where you said that Ben Allen's office is under the impression or that the bridge was something that the community had strong support on. So I wanted to make a statement for the record that I'm the council person for Area 6, which is where Potrero Canyon Park is located. And I do not feel like there is strong support for the bridge. And I feel that neighbors, it just sort of happened and it needs to be revisited and that it needs to be a transparent discussion between with the community so that people know what this bridge entails. So I just want that for the record. I don't know how you can back up your statement where Ben Allen says he's under the impression that there is strong support. I'm not sure how you can back up that statement if you have emails, if you have a lot phone calls, if you have some kind of documents to back that up. I don't know where that statement came from. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, then Murray. And I see the other hands. I will call on you, I promise. Murray, Rob, then Caroline, then David Card.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for your update. I wanted to tell you that the reason we asked for an EIR in the Castellamore development is that the developer is only dealing with about the top 1/3 of that landslide. There is some reasonable thought that in order to totally stabilize a landslide, you have to start at the bottom and work your way to the top. What this developer is doing is starting at the top and quitting 1/3 of the way down. What we're concerned about is that that approach might in fact trigger the landslide, blocking Pacific Coast Highway, perhaps even blocking Tremonto Drive, and essentially isolating all of the entire Castellamore neighborhood. So we thought that an EIR that could investigate this thoroughly would be very much appropriate. And we were, to be honest, quite disturbed that you essentially ignored this when you spoke at the hearing.
We understand your concerns. The argument for the EIR is legitimate, and so I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to say that our office would be against them having an EIR. I am going to say that we did hear concerns like from the community about development that has kind of lingered for years and years and decades and that have not been finished. We have heard concerns about staging of construction equipment to block streets and block evacuation routes. And so in order to counter those two things, we are requiring the developer to impose a condition on their approval to say that they're going to stage development or stage their equipment in such a way that doesn't block access to the roads. And so this is a condition of approval that guarantees or that promises that they won't block the roads, they won't have equipment that obstructs access. And so we were able to get the developers to agree to that. But more importantly, to address the issue of kind of lingering development, there's not much we can do, right? We talked about bonding, we talked about kind of different solutions from building and safety to kind of hold the developer accountable to finish their project. And kind of like the interim solution, and I know this might not be the best solution, but is to ask for quarterly updates sent to residences within a 500-foot radius of the development. And so that means every 3 months, residences within the 500-foot radius of the development would receive a timeline update and an update from the developer in terms of what was done in the last 3 months, what to expect this upcoming 3 months, just to keep everyone in the loop. And hopefully this sort of system of constant updates would put the pressure on the developer to finish the project in a reasonable amount of time, because development in the hillside needs special considerations in terms of the timing and the urgency of it. And this is one way that we're trying to put on the developers that once you start construction, these 3 month reports are going to be required, and it's going to trigger that requirement to not only send it to the residents around the area, but also our office. And so that's one of the ways that we're kind of addressing the issues that are in this area. We understand that an EIR is probably not going to happen, but that doesn't mean that we can't use our other tools in order to address the concerns that you guys have.
Okay, just quickly, Jeff, did you, or if you haven't, would you please read the letter that we wrote with respect to the EIR, sorry, because it does lay out some of the immediate neighbors' concerns about the landslide area. I'm just saying, if you haven't read it, please read it. It's a longer letter than our usual, and it's chock full of really good information and a little bit of history that might be helpful. I want to thank you for that 500 square foot radius and the quarterly reports, because maybe that will help these developers finish on time, not sort of, drag on and on. I know Murray showed Steve some of the locations that, building sites that have sort of been there indefinitely forever. We appreciate that. And your sensitivity to hillside streets, we really appreciate. But again, that EIR, it might, the letter might impress upon you why the community is going to maybe push for an EIR. And I wonder if you read that, if there might be an opportunity to have you go to Castellamar, see the place, and maybe hear from some of the neighbors. I think they're kind of eager to get through a little bit. So just let me know after you read the letter if you'd be willing to talk to some of the neighbors.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
And we're willing to
Rob,
increase the radius too. Like if you wanted more than 500, we're willing to talk to the developer to increase the radius to like 1,000 or whatever, to just so that everyone gets a chance to get that update. So, yeah.
to cover more of Castellamare. That's great. Thank you. So lots of people, let's just get through this as best we can. Rob, Caroline, David Card, and then Beth Holden Garland, and I see the rest of you. So just quickly, everybody, and then Haldis.
Sure. I have two really quick questions for Jeff and then a comment. First question for Jeff is this call for consultant for the pre-design for the bridge and the trail. I presume that's a public document where could we see what was requested by the city if one of us wanted to go look at that request?
That's a great question. I just have here, it's called the project approval environmental documents, or sorry, the task order to the solicitation. So I have here my notes from Gabby that was what was released, but in terms of where this is posted, that is a great question. I can find out and get back to you, Robert.
I'd appreciate that, and I'm sure others on here would appreciate that. The second question I
Jake
had is
might
you
be able to
mentioned.
tell us, Rob. Jake's on the call, and I think he might be able to tell us. So just saying.
Okay.
Keep going.
The second question is, you had mentioned that there's a number of motions that you need to make to get the funds that have been committed by the state and the federal government into the city budget, and I understand that. I'm going to ask whether those funds are going to be directed to the existing Potrero Canyon Trust Fund, which was set up about 15 years ago to fund this project. If it's not specifically directed to there, I would ask maybe the council to consider asking the city to have the funds directed to this specific trust fund. We can give you the number in the city account. And the reason I ask this is because this is a way that we set up 15 or 16 years ago to ensure that funds for the Potrero project aren't usurped and used somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I do not know where the funds are going in terms of the number of the fund. But if you provide me with that number, I can follow up to make sure, or to follow up to see if it's actually going into that fund. And I totally agree with your statement about accountability and making sure that that this money is spent correctly.
Right, and if you look at actually, there was if you look back to 2004, there was actually an ordinance, I think, approved by the Los Angeles City Council that set up the fund for the purposes that I'm describing. And we can get that to you. The last thing I want to say is just a comment. And
Rob, before
honestly,
you make your comment, can I interject quickly about the fund? So in the mayor's
Absolutely.
budget right now, if you look online in the mayor's draft budget, you'll see a line item that's called trust fund, like Potrero Canyon Trust Fund. Is that what you're talking about? Like the fact that that's there and this money should go into it? Okay,
Yes.
so we can affirm that that line item is still in the mayor's budget. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And again, all of the sales proceeds from all the homes and the lots over the past dozen years or whatever, all went into that trust fund to ensure that the money would be used for this project and not another. There's a long history of this project, and there's a long history of support for pedestrian access from the bottom of Potrero Canyon to Will Rogers Beach. I've got here, and I've got many of these. This is an article from the Los Angeles Times, June 1988, where former councilperson Brody is talking about the bridge that will go from the bottom of Potrero Canyon across the beach, across PCH to the beach. There was support for it then. There's been massive support for it all through the years. At the same time that this council unanimously asked in 2004 for the design of Potrero Park to include a number of things. And when it set up the trust fund, it asked for a bridge, and that was unanimous, and that's in the minutes, or actually the agenda that that Miriam sent out a few days ago. Subsequent to that, and as part of this process, Councilman Mizelkowski, Cindy Mizelkowski, established a Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Board in early 2005 that included 15 people selected to represent a wide representation of views within the community. I was fortunate to be on that committee, David Card also, and many others who you people know. We held a series of over 24 public meetings monthly to discuss all aspects of the park. Those meetings were attended by hundreds of people. I have some of the lists of the people who attended still here in my office. And the park that you see today, which is beautiful and finally open, was influenced by the input of all these people coming together from the community. It's a passive park because of community input. There's a certain number of entrances to the park because of community input. There's parking lots in certain places and bathrooms in certain places because of community input. And the number one thing that the community requested in its final use report, which you've probably seen, the primary thing was a bridge to assure a safe crossing of Pacific Palisades, of PCH to the beach. So for those listening, Jeff, Jake,
Rob, this
there's
isn't a
been a
bridge
long amount of
discussion.
community
Beg you to-
support. It's still there, and I'm going to wind up now. Thank you very much.
Okay, there is a bridge discussion coming up. And Dave, I'm sure you'll talk about that report that Rob was referring to. The motion that passed was a motion that said it was dependent on or pending community outreach. The community outreach was up to that that Brown acted board that Rob was referring to. They did have some community meetings. Apparently there was not, they weren't calm community meetings. There were a lot of different points of view that came to the meetings, and then those meetings stopped. So Dave can tell us more about that. Caroline, you're up next.
Hi. I would respectfully disagree with some of the comments that have been made about widespread community support. I would echo what Cindy Simon said. I am a resident of the community, and I have been since the 1990s. I attended some meetings in the 1990s about the park, and I don't remember conversations about the bridge. I remember there was conversations about where the access points would be. I talked to people today about it who still haven't heard about the bridge. So I really don't understand how we're driven by what the community sentiment was in '88 or in the 90s or even in the early 2000s. We're in 2023 and we're living in a very different city than we were even a couple of years ago. I think that there's this narrative that there's broad community support, and I think that we need to assess what the current community level of community support is. And from conversations that I have and people that I talk to as a member of this community, I would say there's significant opposition to a bridge. I also think that it's appropriate to take a step back and ask, what's the need for the bridge? This is a huge amount of money that we're talking about. And even when it was authorized just in 2021, we're looking at a different city just in the last couple of years post-COVID. The homelessness crisis is, undeniable, and the economic disparity in our city is greater than it's ever been before. And our community is part of a larger Los Angeles community. So for us to justify spending, whether it's $11 million or even more, which I think it's not unreasonable to think it would be more to build the bridge, given that all the cost for everything has been over what it was originally anticipated. there has to really be a reason for it and a need for it. And it seems that if the need for it is that there needs to be greater access to Potrero Canyon Park, I would challenge that and really question that, given that there are 2 public access points now on Front Street and at the rec center that are accessible to anybody and everybody. And the Coastal Commission is requiring the access from Temescal Park, Temescal parking lot from the beach. So there will be access, beach access from there. I don't understand why we would need a 4th access point to the park.
Caroline?
Similarly, yeah.
Please wrap up your point. I'm going.
Okay. I was just going to question also if it's that there needs to be additional access to the beach. It appears that we've got, we already have, we'll have 3 access points to the beach at Chautauqua, at Temescal, and at from the park through the trail. So I would ask that we take a step back, that we not have this deadline of May to get a position on it, that we get community support, and that we really consider, is this money better spent to address the homelessness crisis, to provide resources to rec centers throughout the city and under-resourced areas, or even some of it to the Palisades Rec Center, where we have equipment, playground equipment that isn't ADA compliant.
Okay, thank you. So Jake is on the call. I have a text from Jake and Rod. Jake would like to talk about the bridge, and I think it's a good thing that you brought up the May deadline, because I think a lot of us might be miffed at that. So Jake, you have the floor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mariam. Yeah, I'm happy to have a discussion about the bridge. I thought this was going to take place a bit later. So I don't, if we can maybe hold off, I'm very happy to have a conversation about the bridge. And I have a number of comments and clarifications from Jeff's comments, but maybe, I don't know how you feel, Mariam. We can either do it now, or if it's better.
I tend to agree. I tend to agree. So everyone who wants to make a comment on the bridge, please bring your hand down. I think we got a sense that there is comment to be made on the bridge. Let's get through Jeff's presentation. Jeff has some exciting things going on later today in Barrington Plaza. So any other questions not related to Potrero Canyon, let's get those through to Jeff, and then we'll move on to Potrero Canyon. We'll simply do that. I'll do roll call, and then we'll do Potrero Canyon. So any other questions for Jeff? Barbara Cohen, Haldis Topple.
Thank you, Miriam. I just wanted to mention to Jeff, when he made the comment that he's concerned about the residents, that there are 100 single-family homes just beyond the Castellamar project that are within the city limits that are of concern. We need to travel PCH to get to our homes. It's a 2-lane road along the landslide. There is mud and water and debris on the highway currently. There probably are several 100,000 daily vehicles traveling from 3 o'clock or 2:30 on every day, going north towards Malibu and points beyond. Therefore, in my opinion, an EIR and a traffic study is mandated to look at the impacts of traffic and the construction on PCH. You have me as a resident of Pacific View, which is in that 100 home area, and I travel PCH daily to and from my home. The other thing is, you mentioned a 3-month meeting arrangement with the developer. From my experience working with another developer in the community, we met monthly for years to work out problems. A community group was formed with representatives of the homeowner associations that were impacted and the community council. And we had monthly meetings to talk about the project, the negative and the positive. And I would recommend monthly meetings on this project if it goes forward. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Barbara. Haldis? Haldis, you're mute.
Okay. I will say up front that I certainly do not support mega mansions in our community. I'm just wondering how how the political climate that supports more density will oppose a lower FAR. When you make the houses smaller, you use less property, and our mega mansions are often sitting on several lots, and they're not going to have 2 or 3 families living in them. It's just a general question. Thank you.
Sorry, can you repeat your question? It was about FAR and density.
The political climate wants to increase density.
Yeah.
A lower FAR, meaning a lower space or height, is reducing the size of the house. And many of the mega mansions are sitting on multiple lots, and they certainly will not have more than 1 family living in them. So my question, not to you personally, but to the system.
We asked him that question. He has an answer. Go ahead. You can ask him.
Okay. Well, then I back off and I won't take any more of your time. Thank you.
Tell us.
Yeah.
So
When we're talking about density, we're talking about both residential, like units per lot, as well as square footage. And so you're correct that if we're lowering the FAR, then we would technically get smaller units, and we would be or smaller size units.
Yes.
But really, what we're trying to do is increase the amount of dwellings that can be placed on a lot. And so I guess the correct way that or not the correct way, but the way that we're looking at density in terms of increasing housing is units per lot, right? Mm-hmm. So the more units that we can have per lot, the better. Yes. I mean, in this neighborhood, it's an R1 neighborhood, so it's 1 unit per lot. Maybe 1 plus an ADU, right? So what we're really looking at is trying to either get smaller lots or try to encourage the developer to just decrease the square footage of the homes, because the FAR is 3 to 1, right? And mm-hmm. So 3 to 1 is a lot, right? Usually in Venice, you're going to hit your height limit before you hit your FAR limit. So in terms of like trying to find limits in terms of sizes of homes, FAR is one way to look to decrease the size of homes, but really if we can institute a height limit in the Castellamare area, I think that's going to do the trick, because oftentimes developers won't max out on the FAR because of the height limit, because the height kind of just stops them at a certain point where they can't get more floor area or square footage. Mm-hmm. Now, then people start building box homes, and then that becomes a whole different discussion about design, right? But I'm just letting you know that in terms of having height regulations, that's one way to kind of scale down the homes in this neighborhood.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions for Jeff? All right, Jeff, I thank you very much for spending this time with us. Thank you for all the support you've given us, the way that you've been accessible to us. We've reached out to you a number of times on a number of issues. You've always been proactive, and I appreciate it. I'm sure you'll continue to be in touch, and I will bring your updates to the board. Thank you again, and our best to Tracy Park.
All right, thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Jeff. All this, I will forward his answer to that same question that he sent to us a couple of weeks ago. It's a simpler, it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense if you can understand the city. All right, everyone, I'm going to do roll call really quickly, and then we're going to go to Potrero and the bridge. This is roll call. I'm Mariam Zar, I'm president. I'm here. Vice President Jenny Lee. Let's do this quickly, everyone. Jenny is not here. Treasurer Randy Young. Randy is here. Secretary Beth Holden Garland.
I'm here.
Beth is here. Chair Emeritus David Card.
Here.
He's here. Area 1 Murray Levy is here.
I'm here.
Thank you. Alternate Cindy Young is here. Second alternate Joanna Spock is here. Forgive me, everyone, I'm going quickly. If anyone has an objection and wants to hear voices, please let me know. Area 2 Steve Crone is not here. Alternate Bruce Schwartz is not here. Second alternate Diana Danielle, logged in, but is not here. Area 4 Karen Ridgely is not here. First alternate Leanne Sanderson is here. Second alternate Daphne Gronick is not. Nope, she
I
did.
am
Thank you.
here.
Thank you. Daphne is here. Area 5, Kimberly Bloom is here. Thank you. Second alternate, Sue Cole is here. I'm sorry, first alternate, Sue Cole is here. Second alternate, Cliff Roberts is not. Cindy Simon is here. Alternate, Quentin Fleming is here. Second alternate, Harlan Hogue is here. Area 7, Julie Silliman is here. Second alternate, Rick McGay is here. I'm sorry, first alternate, Rick McGay is here. Second alternate, Kathy Russell is here. Area 8, Reza Akef is going to be here, is not here right now. First alternate, David Tobman is not here. Second alternate, Eli Sapoikia is not here. At-large rep, Chris Spitz is here. First alternate, Andrew Wolfberg is not here. Second alternate, Mary Mueller is not here. All right, organizational representatives. John Padden,
I'm here.
thank you. Nina Kidd. Mary Schultz,
Here.
thank you. That's alternate in the culture and aesthetics category. Education, Greg Haight.
Here.
Thank you. Elisa Wolfson here, I believe. Yes,
I'm here.
thank you. Historian Eric Dugdale, not here. Alternate Barbara Cohen is here. Civics category, Richard Blumenberg is here. Thank you. Alternate Kevin Niles is also here. Thank you. Environmental category, Shirley Hagstrom is here. Alternate Ryan Craig is not here. Service clubs, Bill Skinner is here.
Hi.
Thank you, Bill. Good to have you. Alternate Gabrielle Gottlieb. Nope, not here. And Resident Association, Courtney Macker is here. Alternate Jessica Rogers? Not here. I certify that we do have quorum. Okay, everyone. Jake, I'm going to give you the floor. You heard, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to give the floor to David Card because he had his hand up just before we stopped talking about the bridge. Is that okay, Dave, or do you want to hear from Jake first?
I'd rather hear from Jake first.
Okay, then Jake, you have the floor.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, sorry, I know we were jumping the gun a little bit, so I wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to speak. Thanks to everyone. So Jake Edinger from Senator Allen's office. So a little bit of background. So we have, been working on this bridge for a while. This is a project that came from the community. This came from a PPCC committee with this idea, and what the committee was asking for and the community was asking for was funding for this project. We were able to secure that funding. The senator was able to secure $11 million for this bridge project for a number of different reasons: to connect the park to the beach so that people could access the beach, so that folks from the greater community could come to the beach and then access the park, that the public has spent a lot of money creating this beautiful park, which I actually was just visiting last weekend, and it's in full bloom, as you all know, and it was great to see. And there was a conversation about the Coastal Commission, so I'll get to that in a second, but we also know that there have been a lot of fatalities of people running across PCH. And so to try to prevent that from happening and creating a really safe, easy way that people could get between the beach and the park. So that was kind of the background for this. We heard from one community member recently after the senator has talked about this park to the community for years since he secured the funding. The last 2 years, he's talking over and over again about this project. Our newsletter, which I'm sure all of you read very, very closely, and is sent to hundreds of thousands of residents in the Palisades and across our district, had a detailed explanation of the $11 million we secured for this park, for this pedestrian, for the bridge, for the pedestrian bridge. But we had one community member recently who was part of this board raise with us that they were neutral. They were not opposed to the bridge, but had some concerns. And so we just wanted to check in again. And even though we had support from the advisory committee, the Potrero Bridge Advisory Committee, just wanted to get a temperature check and make sure, to see that the community was still supportive of this project. because that's what we had heard. So happy to talk if there's, to hear their specific concerns. But just a couple of things that I wanted to clarify from Jeff's comments that weren't precisely correct. So the feasibility study, there's no feasibility study. It's called a project initiation document. We met with the city officials just last week to talk about it. So the project initiation document, which is currently, they've requested for a consultant to come in and do that process. And as was mentioned and shared in the chat, that request went out April 19th and is by the end of May that the consultant is going to be then selected by the city and start this project. It's not a feasibility study in the sense that it's not to say, is a bridge technically feasible to build? Rather, the project initiation document is going to say, where exactly is the bridge going to land in the park, in the beach? What are the soil conditions, right? Where can we make sure that it's going to be safe to build the bridge? How wide is the bridge going to be? Things like that. And as part of the process, it also includes a comprehensive community outreach program. So that community members, even though we've been talking about this for years now, and I've told everyone for years that we are going to be building this bridge as requested by the community, that people can weigh in, and if they have specific concerns, I've heard some concerns about public safety, that we can, like there is a closing gate on the entrance to the park off Friend Street, we could potentially, look into something like that to make sure that, people aren't accessing the park outside of park hours. So all of those things would be discussed within the formal consultation process that's going to be part of the project initiation document, which as mentioned takes about 12 to 18 months. And so I wanted to mention that. And then one other point, just to clarify about the Coastal Commission, I understand that the lateral trail does have Coastal Commission approval. And I've heard a few times now, Chris mentioned this, and I've heard this, that the bridge does not have Coastal Commission approval, almost implying that it's not going to get Coastal Commission approval. So I spoke with the Coastal Commission, this is a state entity, right? And they told us that, of course, they would have to look at the project, but they would have no problem with the bridge. They'd be very supportive of a bridge. And as we know, the lateral trail would create that access between the two places, but it's over a half a mile trail that, it's a little bit easier for folks to just cross over a bridge, especially if it's, maybe folks in a wheelchair, than having to, do a 0.6 mile walk. So in terms of thinking about accessibility and access, it's something that the Coastal Commission is not going to have any issues with. So I just wanted to make that clear. So I'm happy to take questions. I'm happy to see if, if people have specific things that they would like to mention or share their thoughts. I know David and a few other members had their hands raised earlier, but I just
So we're
wanted to
going to
make
go
sure.
back to hands raised. I appreciate it, Jake. I'll keep you in that spotlight if you don't mind. I'm grateful that you're on the call. I want to tell everybody that what's on your screen is a little bit of a timeline that Jake had sent to me. As you can see, he's got 1 or 2 years. So all right, well, a couple of clarifications. Jake, we call it the feasibility study because for years we've been told that the Coastal Commission asked for a feasibility study. We will switch over to the term project initiation document, but that was the only reason, not because we thought you were going to tell us whether or not it's feasible, but it was just going to give us some more detail about the bridge, how long it might take, how much it might cost. And we have been asking for that for a while. So that's the only reason we refer to it as the feasibility study. We will change terminology. I want everybody to look on the screen and just, take a look. This is the item that was on my chair's updates because we were getting all this information both from the council office and Senator Ben Allen's office about things moving along, right? So the council office was telling us that they've procured the money to figure out, I call it the feasibility study, but whatever, to figure out what the trail might look like. And at the same time, you started to tell us that this project initiation document had gone out. You were looking for consultants. That process would take a few months. Once that happens, they would come in and, it'd be a couple of years before they gave you the report. And then I just want everybody to see that according to Ben Allen's office, under project steps, there is some community engagement that is due to take about 1 or 2 years. That will include an environmental and design phase, an environmental coastal commission permit, securing construction phase and completion phase. they're estimating 2030. So just want to make sure you all can see that. That is the reason, Jake, that this item is on my chair's updates, is to give people the information and get some feedback so that maybe you can also see whether or not there is some, there are some points of view on this board that you would like to hear that maybe you haven't heard recently, because the last time this board took this up was 2004. So I am here to hear from the board. I know there are members of the community that also want to speak, and we'll hear from them, but here goes the board. David Card.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that back in 2004, there was a Potrero Community Advisory Committee appointed by City Council, as Rob said. 15 of us, for 3 years almost, we had monthly public Brown Act meetings that were extremely well attended by the whole community and reported on assiduously by Palisadian Post and others. And the report came out that the #1 priority is, as it says in the, she may have said that, but was a safe and direct access to the beach. That was in our final report in 2008. Nothing has changed that as the community's priority is a safe and direct access to the beach. The lateral trail is great. Our report also said we'd like to have that too, but that's 0.6 of a mile away under some landslides, and it's not safe and direct as a bridge over PCH directly from Potrero Canyon Park. And let me also say, I want to thank Senator Allen's office for the $11 million. Some of us worked very hard to get that money, and we really appreciate it. And I think it's going to be a fabulous addition to the Palisades, but it's also a fabulous addition to the greater Los Angeles. People come from all over LA to go to Will Rogers State Beach. If they knew they had a bridge that they could go up to and walk through a beautiful park and maybe walk into the village and maybe actually participate in our village in the retail establishments there, I think that would be great. Also, we connect with the beach walk path, and that's being constructed now. It'll connect to the beach bike path that's already there, and that will extend the bike path into Potrero Canyon Park.
Yeah.
The other thing is that that's an argument for equity access. Taxpayers paid for this from all over LA. State taxpayers will be paying for this bridge, and our park in Potrero is not just for Palisadians, although Palisadians are going to be the primary users and beneficiaries of this bridge. It's not just for the Palisades, it's for everybody. And let me just say that the park can be made safe and will be and is safe by #1, security by locking the gates at night. The bridge is not going to affect that. They'll still be locked at night. If we get a bridge, it'll become more of a regional park. We've asked, our park advisory board has already asked that it be designated a regional park, both Rec Center and Potrero and all the associated Rec and Parks properties, including Temescal Canyon Park, along that roadway. So if it's a regional park, we get twice as much access to Quimby funds so that we can use those funds to actually upgrade our 1950s vintage restrooms at the Rec Center, to upgrade our non-ADA playground that's there now. The city has not been willing to do it so far because they expect us to raise the money and pay for those things ourselves. But a regional park would bring us access to more money. And I think that's all I would like to say now. But I think the people of the Palisades supported it in 2004 and 2008. And I think they'll support it again. And by the way, this was not a secret since then. It's been published in newspapers. It's been published in meetings that there will be a bridge, and that bridge has been proposed and lobbied for years and years. And presentations were made to the council, this council, to Park Advisory Board, and at Rec and Parks Board of Commissioners. And I just want to thank Senator Allen for coming up with this money and hopefully continued support for this bridge.
So I want to say in 2017, the city did make a presentation to the PPCC and showed us the park and the riparian way and the conceptual bridge at the time. Dave Card, quickly, the name of the Brown acted advisory committee that you and Rob and George Wolfberg were on, that the name of that committee was?
Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee, appointed by City Council.
Community Advisory Committee. Jake, when you say that a PPCC committee asked for funding, is that the committee you're referring to?
Yes, I do believe it was that committee. I'll have to double check my notes to see if there was something else from PPCC at the time.
Let me explain that.
But David was there, so I'll let him speak more to it.
Yes, George Wolfberg chaired the original committee that issued its report in 2008. And because it was such a long drawn out process and very contentious at times, George said to all of us that that's the last time that committee of 15 is ever going to meet, because it was just too draining. And we came up with a consensus in the end, and he was very pleased with that. But in order to, we can't just issue a report and then not do anything. George invited members of the 15-member committee to come and meet with city officials, project managers especially, and Rec and Parks staff to help shepherd that design that we recommended into reality. So over the last more than a dozen years, since 2008, we have been, a group of us have been doing that. And George invited anybody who wanted to participate, so long as we didn't violate the Brown Act. And we never had so many people that we violated the Brown Act, but after a while, it became a committee of about less than a handful of people. And we were giving feedback to the plans as they developed over time, over the year. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to let everybody speak, and then I sort of want to wrap up an idea that the reason why we're having this conversation. So Beth, did you still want to say something? Board Secretary Beth Holden Garland.
I mean, I've had 2 fires since I've been in the Palisades. I've packed many times over, but the October 2018 fire, luckily we got out at 7 a.m. At 8 a.m. there was 2 hours of traffic getting out on Sunset Boulevard. So if a fire were to be started, because we're seeing graffiti in the park, obviously at night, it's not happening in the day. So if that's not protected, it's putting all of us at jeopardy. So, I get, we all want the park. And of course, all this was done years ago, but it's not as safe as it used to be. And I just think we need to protect the community. So there either needs to be monitoring, yes, from LAPD or security, or locked gates, or something that's a compromise. We have to be safe, period.
Okay, Cindy Young?
Yes.
Cindy.
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
What? I'm sorry?
Oh, I thought you had your hand raised. Okay, so you're not, Cindy Haldis, you spoke on something else, right? You wanted to speak on something else. Leanne.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, so Leanne, Diane Wolfberg, Christina Spitz, Leanne Sanderson, Diane Chris.
Okay. My turn, I have the floor.
Yes, you do.
I found it incredibly generous that we got this money for this bridge. I was actually shocked. And I appreciate the 15 people who are on this committee, but the world has changed. And I don't know if people cross. I had a constituent ask, if someone comes from the beach and they start a fire and my house burns down, is anyone liable? And it's a fair thought. I personally use the beautiful push button where you push the button, and it's like parting of the seas on PCH down by where all the mobile homes are. It's a beautiful crossing. and I use that regularly. And that might be an idea to see what the use is, because, you know, not that many people are using it, and the community is probably 500 homes there. It would be helpful maybe to see how many people are using the park. I don't want to waste Governor Newsom's gift. And I'm very concerned about people coming over. I thought about the door on the other side. At night, would you have it be one way? And what if a child got left behind on the bridge and you made it out and you can't get back in? I mean, there's a lot of issues with how that bridge is going to work. And there's a lot of concern in the community. In all fairness, these are 15 people on this committee of 30,000 citizens. Maybe we should have a committee at the farmers market and even survey people, because my constituents are not aware of it. They have no idea it's going in. And when I casually mention it to people, they're pretty surprised. So that's just a thought.
Thank you, Leanne. Diane, then Chris.
Hi, I'm going to read so I don't talk too long. The decision to have a bridge was decided long ago after years of support by a majority of this community. Funding was more recently made available, and I considered it settled. Now you're being asked only to reconfirm that public support. My children, grandchildren, and I have been to the park many times since it opened and had conversations with others every single time, most of whom have been local residents. Individuals and families bring their dogs on leashes. Elderly parents walk with their adult children. 4 of those adult children have shared stories of their own long ago trips, trespassing through the original canyon, carrying their surfboards and jaywalking across PCH. They all expressed appreciation for the new trails and said that they look forward to the day they can cross to the beach easily and safely. We have yet to meet any park visitors who have objected to the bridge. We sincerely appreciate everyone's support for this park to function as the community had envisioned it. And I wonder how many of you are talking to park visitors as we have been. Thank you.
Diane Wolfberg, I am grateful that you have attended our meeting, and thank you for speaking. Chris?
Okay, just a couple of comments. You know, I'm now the at-large rep, so I've been involved with this issue for many years. I was also on that committee, and by the way, I have posted on the PPCC website that committee's report so everyone can read it. And Dave was pretty accurate in describing it. I will say one more thing, that report also said it had no objection to a feasibility study about the bridge. So that's just something to note. And the Coastal Commission does refer to it in the coastal permit as a feasibility study, whatever we want to call it. But let's just move away from that. As the at-large rep, I hear from people. I hear from local residents and others throughout the Palisades who have expressed concerns about this bridge, either because they've never heard of it. I know that a lot of people on this call know about it and have been involved for many years and have had, you know, conversations with elected officials and everything else. And that is all well and good. And I appreciate all the efforts that everyone has put in to make this a beautiful park. But I have heard from residents who are concerned, expressing some of the things that some people here have said today. One of the primary things I hear over and over again is, if there's going to be this lateral trail with access to the beach at Temescal Canyon, why in the world do we need to spend millions of dollars of taxpayer money for this bridge? That's really kind of the bottom line for a lot of people. And I will also say this, I'm the vice chair of the West Side Regional Alliance of Councils, which is all neighborhood and community councils throughout the west side of LA. Mariam used to be the chair. She's very familiar with that group. I'm sure she'll agree with me. We hear all the time in our meetings, public meetings, about how park poor and, you know, bereft of open space, all these other areas are, including other areas of the west side. Palisades is blessed. A lot of people will argue, how in the world are we spending millions and millions of dollars for a bridge when we already have access to the beach, or will have, you know, fingers crossed. And I appreciate the efforts of Senator Allen and Councilmember park to get that going, the lateral trail. Why should all this money be spent for this bridge when we already have access, when all these other areas of LA are so needy? That is really a question of equity and justice that I think needs to be addressed. I want to say again, I want to hear from the community. I wanted what the community wants. If the community now, 15 years later, and we haven't had a full discussion in the community about this until now, and I'm grateful we're starting it now. But if the community wants it, fine. If the community doesn't want it, I think we need to revisit it. That's my position. I don't have a position one way or the other right now, other than I want to hear from the community. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. I want to say that I also hear from people, and I do not hear unanimous support. I suspect that Jake and the office of Ben Allen also got that sense. The reason I put this on the agenda was because there is a motion in 2004, and I put that in the agenda so everybody could see it. This board voted in 2004 to affirm this. That's what we do. We vote for things, we don't revisit them. It's 19 years later, there are different people who live in the community. I also hear, people talking about not having heard about this bridge or wondering how it would impact the community. I don't hear anybody saying that the park isn't wonderful or that the bridge wouldn't be an ideally great idea, but I do hear people talking about how does it impact the community. So I wanted to bring the information that's been made available to us to the board. I wanted to inform this board today, this 2023 board, that in 2004, a different set of people, but this board affirmed this project. And I wanted to hear from the board as to how you guys would like to proceed, because at this moment, Senator Ben Allen would like to hear or to see a letter of support. And I don't have one to give them. One was not written in 2004. You can read the motion. The motion was unanimous, but it was looking ahead at some community input. That community input was given through the advisory committee, but there's no letter for me to send to Ben Allen's office. And so that's why this board is talking today. This is not an action item. We're not making a decision, but I would like to understand from the board where you'd like to go. If you'd like to have, which is what I think we should probably have, some sort of a community meeting after the not feasibility study, but the project initiation document comes out, so that the community has something concrete to consider and to think about, to ponder, and to speak upon. So we have a normal process. Most of you on the board know this. Jake, you guys probably know this as well. We have a process. Usually when there's an issue that has broad community impact, we take it to our land use committee. In this case, we might take it to the Potrero Canyon Oversight Committee. That's why we formed it. Depending on when the feasibility comes out, let's see who's appropriate. We can take it to that committee, have that committee have an open forum for everyone in the Palisades to come and speak. That committee will make a recommendation to the PPCC, and then the board of the PPCC will speak to you, the office of Ben Allen. That is the best and fairest way that I can think. As you can see from this call, there will be people from the community who speak, in different ways about the bridge. Ultimately, Jake, it might be up to the office of Ben Allen to go through that 10-year process that you've outlined that does have some community outreach. You guys will conduct that community outreach. Maybe that's the best way, but this is me trying to figure out what this board is going to do. So I see Anya, I see Rob, and I want to say, I believe Assembly Member Jackie Irwin is on the call. Jackie, if you are and you'd like to speak, we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to just listen, that's okay too. Okay, so
it is not Jackie, it is me, Nancy.
Hey, Nancy, do you want to say anything? Do you want to add to the conversation, or are you okay hearing?
Actually, I will let Jake take it away. We've gone back and forth about a few things, and since he's been the person tonight,
okay,
I give him the floor.
Jake,
Thanks, Nancy.
I give my time.
I appreciate it, Nancy. I do have a few comments, but I would love to hear Robert and Anya first and then close if that's all right.
Wonderful. That'd be great. So Anya, then Rob.
Hello. As you can see, the Wolfberg family is in attendance. George's wife, Diane, David, Michael, and I am his daughter, Anya. We'd like to thank Mariam Zar for providing a summary of the extensive public process and decision-making by the city The city appointed Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee and the support of its final recommendations by the Pacific Palisades Community Council. Thank you also to Senator Allen's office for bringing forward the funding needed for this bridge. In the 2008 final report of the committee on page 1, proposal number 1 says, quote, bridge for beach access. The committee's top priority is to ensure a safe crossing of Pacific Coast Highway and to prevent further pedestrian deaths. George Wolfberg worked many hours to facilitate a well-publicized, community-driven process. This process by design attracted input from all corners of the community and ensured that alternate viewpoints were heard. When the final recommendations were delivered with no opposition, it was George's feeling that these perspectives that they brought in through the process contributed greatly to the end result, which is this beautiful park we've been discussing with a clear, vetted, multi-agency plan for future safe beach access. Since his passing, our family has heard from a great many people who universally share this sentiment about how the Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee fulfilled its mission. The Wolfberg family agrees with the conclusions of the advisory committee, as well as what we understand may be requirement for the park's upgrade to the designation of a regional park, which is going to bring other assets into the community under that designation. A bridge to safely extend this new public park to the public beach, linking and combining county and city recreational amenities is essential. It opens these public assets to all of the public, as George Wolfberg in his capacity as a community leader was also called upon to respond to too many tragedies on Pacific Coast Highway. In recent years, there have been an increase in fatalities and traffic, and a future bridge will be important traffic safety and mitigation measure. It's also clear that a bridge is the only means to achieve safe, equitable connectivity that will not impede traffic. There should be no unnecessary delays in bringing the bridge into being. Thank you.
Thank you, Anya. Robert?
Yeah, Anya said a lot of the things I was going to say, so I'll try and keep this short. The bridge is going to save lives. People have been killed on this stretch of Pacific Coast Highway. A bridge will prevent that. Lee actually made a great point, which is, hey, if wouldn't it be cheaper to do a pedestrian controlled stoplight? I actually agree with that. I think that would be a great solution. It's a solution that the committee talked about, and at the time we asked Caltrans, is that feasible? And Caltrans was the one that said no. So if part of this not feasibility process, whatever this process is that's going forth, I know that the committee from back then and probably a lot of the people today would be in favor of taking a look at whether Caltrans would allow a pedestrian controlled crosswalk stoplight, and that can make this a lot cheaper. The last thing I'm going to say is, look, the park that we see today is not the way it is because of 15 people. I mean, we are a board that our goal is to represent the views of all of the Palisades. And the Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee did that. We got input from a lot more people than I've ever seen at a community council meeting in 20 years of coming to the community council. We had some meetings where 200 people, in excess of 200 people, showed up. We synthesized all of the input that we got. Some people wanted open park. The park locks. I mean, there's a reason why there's locked gates in the park from dusk till dawn. That was to provide safety. There's a reason why the park is landscaped a certain way, with fire to protect against fires. It was designed in a certain way to eliminate hiding places where perhaps homeless people could take camp. There were homeless people back then too. We considered all these things. And the result of all of that input is the park that you see today. And as Anya has said, a key part of that park is access from this public park that's owned by everybody in Los Angeles to Will Rogers Beach, which belongs to all the people of Los Angeles. And let's be clear.
Okay.
Let's be really clear. A bridge, this is my last bit. A bridge will make it easier for the people of Los Angeles to access each of these public facilities.
Okay.
Not having a bridge will make it more difficult.
Okay.
And some of the same people who were against the bridge and against rim access 20 years ago because it would impact their backyard are the same people that you've heard today.
That's not fair.
The majority of people in the community are in favor of a bridge. Thank
Okay.
you.
Cindy, I think we heard you say that's not fair. Yes, so the park stands to have community-wide impact, and I think there are people here from, beyond backyards. I think that point has been made. So Jake, take it away. You can close out this this chair's update for us.
Thank you. I really
Jake, 1 second. I will take issue with the May deadline. You will not hear conclusively from anyone, not the PPCC, not any Palisades entity by the end of May. If there's a reason for it, please tell us. I took a look at the mayor's budget and I saw that $11 million in her budget. So I know the money's there. I know you're looking at about a 10-year timeline. I, again, will say that I'd like to see what is the project initiation document and bring it to the community and have everybody, speak informedly about what's about to unfold. I would like to tell you what the community thinks at that point. If there is any kind of consensus, or if there's what you hear now, which is, some measure of support and some common concerns that people would like to have addressed, like security, like, whether or not we can, maybe with the help of the senator, become a regional park where we can get more resources, for example, rangers. Those are all going to be issues that we'd like to discuss. But by the end of May, you're going to have what you have basically today, which is a sense that there are a lot of opinions out there. So you get the last word.
Great. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate hearing this updated feedback. I just wanted to close with a few points. So, one, I'm glad to hear that a lot of people are really concerned about the equity and access angle. I think that building this bridge will increase equity, increase access to the park, to the beach. So I'm glad that the community cares so much about increasing access and equity for folks, not just in the Palisades, but if we're saying we're concerned about folks in other parts of the city. Like I don't get to live in the Palisades, but I had a fantastic time enjoying the park last weekend. So I'm glad to hear that is something that people are thinking about. Two, I wanted to say that a couple of people have said, well, I've talked to people in the community and they haven't heard about this park. Well, most people in our community have not even heard of State Senator Ben Allen or most of the things that are going on in their district, right? I would be shocked if you talked about did you hear about that street repaving, or did you hear about this, I don't know, park that's opening in 10 years? I would be shocked if every community member had heard about it. And that's specifically why in the project initiation document in the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be comprehensive community outreach done by professionals. We do our best here in the staff, but there's only a few of us. And so that's why we rely and talk to community leaders like yourselves. But the professional consultants that are going to be brought on to do this work and do this work across the region and the country, whichever firm is picked, is going to make sure that the community is consulted, has an opportunity to weigh in, to raise these concerns, and make sure that the final project and the final bridge really does take these concerns seriously. So I wanted to mention that about the community outreach angle. And finally, I'll close by saying public safety is incredibly important. I really take that concern really seriously. All of you are here this evening and spend your time because you care so much about your community and making it a better place, and of course, making sure that it's safe. And building this bridge is not going to suddenly, grant access to this park in a way that people can't access right now, right? If you are an unhoused individual, there are other ways into this park, and the bridge isn't going to be the only way to be there, to get there. But we would want to make sure, of course, we would build into the bridge a way that, whether that's the gate, so folks can't get in when the park's closed. We've been working very closely with Councilmember Park's team, especially her district team, a great district director and the field rep in the area, Michael and Gabby. And if there were concerns, we would make sure that LAPD was, had patrols if there were any issues. So we take that concern super seriously. And I think that throughout the project initiation document period over the next 12 to 18 months, people will really be able to raise those concerns. So I just wanted to close with those 3 points, and thank you everyone for your time and your comments.
I thank you for attending our meeting, Jake. I really do. I know you've been working on this for a while. I appreciate all the information that you sent us. Everyone, it's on your agenda. The bridge project has a process that unfolds over the course of 10 years. And as Jake said, there is a community outreach component. So we will continue to have this conversation, Jake, when the feasibility study, when the PID is ready, please let us know. I know the money's been procured and I know the process has begun. So I think that'll be helpful. I thank you all for partaking in this conversation. Thank you for being here. Okay. So we have approved our minutes. Back to our agenda. We've approved our minutes. We've done roll call. We've heard from Jeff Cow, consideration of agenda and upcoming meetings. Today we'll hear officer nominations. Those officer nominations will be open until 15 minutes before the end of our meeting next time in May. So our May 25th meeting will be the deadline for self-nominations or other people to be nominated from the floor within, the deadline will be 15 minutes before the close of that meeting. The close of that meeting will be 8 o'clock. We'll have a candidates forum on June 8th, if need be. On June 22nd, we'll have officer elections, and we'll also have Councilmember Tracy Park speaking. I'm trying to make that an in-person meeting. I might ask you all to raise your hands and see if everybody wants an in-person meeting or not. I'm going to have the treasurer's report, and I see a couple of hands. I don't know why they're up, but I'll take those questions. Treasurer's report.
Yes, we had a quiet couple weeks. We have $43,977.11. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
Mariam, can I just make a comment on your last announcement? This is important. So you indicated that the officer election will be on June 22. That is incorrect. Under the bylaws, the officer election has to be the first meeting in June. So the process, and you did indicate this in the revised agenda, that the process is there's an officers candidates forum if needed, i.e. if there's more than one candidate per seat, and then the officers election take place. That does not happen on June 22. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Chris. So that's great because the candidate forum and the officer election will both happen on June 8th. And that means on June 22nd, we don't actually have to squeeze in an officer election while Tracy Park is speaking. So thank you, Chris. All right, everyone. So at the next meeting will be a deadline for nominations, self or otherwise. June 8th, our first June meeting, we will have officer candidates forum if there's more than one candidate for each position, and officer elections. June 22nd, we'll hear from Tracy Park, and then July and August, we only have one meeting. Treasurer's report, we've done. General public comment by the public on any item that is not on the agenda. Is there any public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm moving to reports and announcements from the chair, which might get a little exhausting at this point, but we can do them. LADWP, if you all look at your agendas, everyone, LADWP is doing some repairs to poles, not necessarily pole tops. So I reached out and I asked them to tell us where in the Palisades they'd be doing some repairs. There are 2 locations. Please click on the map that's hyperlinked in your agenda to see where those are. Open call to those interested in officer positions. the committee will make its recommendations known today, but I do encourage everybody to think about whether or not you'd like to be an officer of the Pacific Palisades Community Council. All of the officer roles are up for re-election every year. I encourage everyone to throw their hat in the ring if they'd like any of these positions. They're all open. So please, put in your hat, get into the leadership positions of the community council, even if it's just for one term or for 1 year. It can be fun. You can learn a lot. There's a lot going on in this community that's wonderful. It helps bring people together. So I encourage everybody to think about jumping into that race. Outreach committee had a meeting. I can give you a report of our first outreach committee meeting. If you look on your agenda, you will see a couple of logos that we are deciding on. I think that we decided to go with the second one, or the first one, this one, the one that looks like a champagne sort of bottle popping. We're making some adjustments to this so we can have the word Pacific Palisades Community Council written on the logo, but that will be our celebration year logo. And then we're going to work on redoing the logo going forward. That may or may not be it. We've had some feedback to this logo. Somebody asked for the mountains, so we'll work on that. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is likely to be the celebratory year logo. We decided on the date of September 30th. That was the day that the council office was willing to give us their support. They're willing to close off streets for us. So we're thinking about a street map for where we might be able to close off streets. We're going to be celebrating, as you all know, the PPCC, the Village Green, the Historical Society, the Uplifters in Rustic Canyon. I now understand that SMCCA is celebrating their 75th year, or they just finished celebrating their 75th year. So they'll be in the mix. We'll be celebrating community, not just PPCC. So we have decided to have music, bands, public officials. There might be a little bit of a fair atmosphere. We might have games. Our committee has fanned out into different subgroups where we're trying to get music, and we are trying to see how many of the local restaurants would like to have a presence so we can figure out how much of a festive atmosphere we're going to have. The timing we've decided is going to be from 11 to, I believe, 3 p.m. We have a theme. Our theme is going to be where our community meets the coast. That was actually something that was thought up by one of the kids of somebody who's on this board. We thought it was lovely, and that actually led us to think about having a youth element. So we might have a booth for the kids to come and maybe bring their poetry or art about Pacific Palisades. So we are toying with a lot of great ideas. We encourage you to send your ideas to us. We formed the committee. The committee's now been posted on the website so you can see its members. And we had a really great meeting where we talked about other outreach issues as well. But I encourage you all to join the committee, work on the 50th anniversary celebration and other outreach elements as well. For the 4th of July, by the way, since this is our 50th year celebrating in the 75th parade, we have decided to have a presence in the parade beyond just the car that we usually have, which usually has our honorees, the Citizen of the Year, and whoever else wants to ride. We have reached out to PAPA to see if we can have a banner and have board members walk with the banner. So hopefully for the first time, we will have a presence in the parade, and our banner will indicate that it's our 50th year anniversary. So I will write up a report and send it to you all so you can see more of what we talked about. But just so you know, the outreach committee has begun to talk about outreach as well as other to talk about the anniversary celebrations as well as other outreach issues. I wanted to let you all know that Michael Amster's birthday is coming up. Michael Amster is our field rep from CD11. He has been incredibly helpful. He's very proactive. Every time we give him a concern or bring him out and show him something or send him an email about something that concerns us, he hits the ground running and he brings us answers. So he has a birthday coming up on May 20th. We've reserved some space at the Draycott from 3 to 5 p.m. on Saturday the 20th. Open to the community. Please stop by the Draycott on Saturday the 20th and help us celebrate Michael Amster's birthday. Item number 8.16 is the issue that we just discussed. So I'm not going to go over that again, but if you look on your agenda, you'll see some of the information that's been passed on to us from the various offices, and you now know what's going on. If you have any comment or you want to share your thoughts with me, please feel free to email me. We had a meeting with CD11 about the Department of Cannabis Regulation because Brentwood Community Council and Pacific Palisades Community Council went to CD11, and we said that we didn't want to see any more cannabis dispensaries in either of these two communities unless and until they came to the community councils and submitted to some sort of review. The reason for that is that there's a cannabis dispensary now in Brentwood that seems to be very ill-placed. It's only a few feet away from Paul Revere. Apparently minors are going in and out, and the product that they're buying is being consumed not 150 feet away from the front door, which is what the ordinance calls for. So we asked to be able to have some review if there is a cannabis dispensary asking for a permit. We were given that review. We were told that as of May 1st, there's been some change in the way that the DCR manages permits, and that for sure we will be given review. Even though we are a community council, we will affirmatively be given some review before a cannabis dispensary is allowed to come into the Palisades. Item 8.18, in partnership with CD11 and the YMCA, we're going to be hosting a safety fair at Simon Meadow on June 10th. That's a Saturday. CD11 is taking the lead, inviting all the agencies that they can think of who are tasked with public safety. They've also invited a couple of local organizations, including PFC, the Forestry Committee, as well as Resilient Palisades. If any of the other organizations on this board would like to be present at this safety fair, please let me know, but mark your calendars for June 10th, safety fair in conjunction with CD11 and YMCA. Caltrans update on Chautauqua. I was hoping Lou would be here to give you, but just so you all know, I've emailed our state representatives to see if they can please jumpstart the PCH task force meetings. You all were talking about the crosswalk that was recently installed on PCH that's very large and very prominent and has resulted in greater safety in crossing PCH. That was actually an accomplishment that was that can be attributed to the PCH task force. George Wolfberg was instrumental in that. So was Richard Bloom. Those task force haven't been convened since, I want to say, November. So I've asked them to convene those again so we can talk more about safety on PCH and Chautauqua. As you all know, Chautauqua is a very challenged intersection. We've been told that Caltrans has submitted their plans to the city. The city has affirmed those plans. They're going to start implementing them, but we have been given a promise that they'll listen to the community with feedback. So anything that does work, they'll continue. Anything that doesn't work, they'll go back to the drawing board and see if they can readjust. My last thing was committee assignment updates. Please take a look at the website and take a look at our committees. A few things have changed around a little bit. I'm going to move over to officer and chair emeritus updates, but first I see a question from Kimberly Bloom. That's it for my updates. Kimberly?
Thank you, Miriam. Yes, in regards to the Chautauqua intersection, you said if the community has objections or concerns or whatever, how are we going to be expressing those? What is the vehicle to express those comments?
Okay, so I'm going to make you this promise. At our next meeting, I will have someone from Caltrans here to present their plans, the final plans that they sent to the city. And we will ascertain at that point how we want feedback. You can always send it, everyone in the community on this board, you can always send your feedback to info@pacpalicc.org, and I will forward them to the place where they have to go. But they could possibly set something up for community feedback, and I will work on that and I'll bring them back.
Yeah, super cool. Thank you so much. Bye.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, that's it for my updates. Officers and Chair Emeritus Jenny, David Card, or Beth Holden Garland. Any updates? Jenny's
I have just one thing to say, and that is that the Palisades Forestry Committee is working with Palisades Elementary and a family who lost their daughter that was a student there. And we will be planting a memorial tree for that student in the coming weeks, very soon. And that's been approved by the principal and with the help of our board rep, Nick Melvoin's office, and with a lot of work by Bill Bruns to work with the family and bird dog this to fruition. So that's good news. Another tree for the Palisades.
Wonderful news. Thank you, Dave. All right, from at-large and area reps. Reza wanted to give an update, but I do not see him here. No one else reached out with any updates, but has anything come up? Okay, in area 4, I do want you all to know that Temescal Canyon Road has a severe buckling of the road yet again. So we put in that service request. We got a response that said street services had gone out and ascertained that it was a real problem. It was an urgent issue and that they would be addressing it quickly. So I see now that they have cones up. I don't know when they'll be addressing it quickly, but there are 2 sets of roads buckling, one in area 3, one in area 4. Both of them have been brought to the attention of street services. So from organizational reps, the Historical Society, Barbara, do you want to say something about the bulletin that we put in the agenda?
Right, May 23rd, we're having a lecture in our annual meeting at Theater Palisades. The author of the book on abalone will be present and speak about the history of abalone in the California coast. Should be very interesting. RSVPs to the Historical Society, the website's on the agenda. Thank you, Miriam.
You're welcome. So it's pacpalhistoricalsociety@gmail.com, everyone.
Yeah.
All right, from government rep. Brian Espin.
Good evening, everyone. Here, let me get my camera going. Sorry. All right. So we've been doing pretty well crime-wise. Just want to reiterate, today I went with our patrol unit. We handled a burglary investigation up in above Sunset. We got there a little too late. Our suspects had fled by the time the officers got there. We did search, and unfortunately the people got in and the same MO, smashed the back window, got inside and ransacked the whole house and the bedroom, and even I think got into the safe. One thing that I'd like to relay, please make sure they had cameras. The one camera in the front facing out in the street, perfect. Didn't pick up our suspects, but they did have a camera in the back, but it was not working properly. And I'm assuming that's where the suspects went in. So if you guys do have cameras, please just make sure you're checking them frequently, making sure they're operating properly. So that way you can get them fixed or up and running as soon as possible, because that does help us in the end. Other than that, we're doing pretty well. We've been doing the extra patrol in the park, as you guys have all been aware of. Hopefully trying to be a little bit more visible and curb some of the activity in the park area, as well as along PCH. So far, I haven't seen too much activity, but we'll see if it plays out for the whole summer. Other than that, that's all I got. So any questions?
I believe Courtney has a question. I think Kimberly might have a question. So does Sue. So let's go Courtney, Sue, and we'll see if Kimberly has one too. Okay, Kimberly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brian. Just a quick question regarding the incident that happened at the park the weekend of April 28th and 29th, where there were a bunch of teenagers drinking and lighting fireworks and driving recklessly. I learned about it first through CTN's article on April 30th, and then through your crime report on May 6th. And I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can be notified sooner, even if you're just sending it to the people on your regular crime report mailing list, because as a parent of a teenager very involved in the community, I had no idea this was an ongoing issue, and neither did anyone that I've spoken to. We were all gobsmacked when we read Sue's article. And if we had known quickly about it, we could have spoken to our kids per your request on May 6th. We could have spoken to them immediately and said, do you know any of the kids that did this? Have you heard about this? What's going on? We want to know, because it's a real danger for our community, the safety of our kids. And also reach out to us. Like, we can be an asset and help you. We're all working this together. And if we'd known earlier, we can put it on our social media and put it on Nextdoor, and sort of, the parents that aren't paying attention, let them know to pay attention, because 30 to 40 kids out at 2:15 in the morning, it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. So just greater communication. I know speaking for a lot.
Sorry, Courtney, what incident in particular are you talking about? Because I haven't heard of an incident where there was like 20, 40 kids at one
You were-
time. And
you
I know
were
there were
quoted-
multiple, there's been multiple occasions on the weekends where kids are hanging out in the park,
Well, you
drinking
were-
and smoking, but not
you-
one particular incident.
Well, you were quoted in Sue's article, so I thought
Okay, I'll have to review the article. I don't know what incident.
it was her
they're referring to.
circulating the news that went out April 30th. She discussed the kids were driving recklessly. There was a resident who the husband counted like around 40 kids at the time that LAPD came and broke it up. And there were kids that were lighting off fireworks. And apparently there's a fight club that's been going on. Like all of these things were completely news to me. And it sounds like
Okay,
it's
so
news to you,
Kimberly
so-
Bloom, was that something you wanted to mention as well?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. All
So
right.
sorry, really quick, the Fight Club I have been aware of for quite a long time. It's actually been going on for quite a while, and I have brought that up in several other meetings here at the council regarding how I go to the park and I sit there, and I remember even talking with Sue Pasco at the park one day when I was sitting there waiting for the kids to get out of school. So that's something I have been aware of, and I have brought that to the attention of I say several times to the meetings. But as far as putting out in the crime update, have a discussion with your kids, that was just more of like an FYI thing, just because it's been such an ongoing issue.
Okay, well, that's my point. I didn't know that drinking at the park had been an ongoing issue.
Okay.
I knew about the Fight Club, which you have mentioned before,
Yeah.
but the drinking and the driving recklessly, I've never heard before.
Okay.
The first time I heard it was in Sue's April 30th report or article. I'm happy to forward it to you.
Okay.
Ryan, is
Thank you.
drinking and driving recklessly a habitual occurrence in the Palisades?
It's sporadic, honestly. So I know there's one person that lives close to the park that has sent me an email of the sounds of tire screeching. But they're not in the park. They're actually right at the closer to Corpus Christi. They're at that corner, Al
Okay,
Marial
so
and
if there's an instance where there are kids, I mean, what Courtney described. So if there's an instance where there are kids, plural, who are driving around and they're inebriated and LAPD responds, what happens? Are they arrested, escorted home?
well, it all depends. I mean, if there's evidence that they're under the influence, then that's a full on DUI investigation. If
Okay,
it's
and that
just
would appear
the
in your
kids,
report?
I'm
That
sorry.
would show- A DUI arrest would show up in your report, right?
No, that's not. I wouldn't put that in the crime update because that's not a part one crime because we get DUIs on PCH quite often.
Okay.
Or at least the traffic units do. So that is not one of our part one crime updates that we do. But if it's involving a kid, one of the local kids, or if it's we find out that it's the local kids driving recklessly, that's something that I will put out there because I would want the neighbors and the community as well as the parents to be aware of it. So the cars driving recklessly, that's kind of spread out. There's Pampas Ricas, there's some in front of the library and the park. They happen on Palisades Drive, but I don't have license plates, so I'm just assuming that they're people local. It could be anybody in from anywhere all over the city, but I'm just assuming that they're local kids just because in certain parts of the neighborhood, not many people will be traversing or traveling through, except for the majors like Sunset and so on.
Okay. So I think the crux of Courtney's question was, do you have a way to communicate to the community if something were to be going on that would or should alarm us or we should know about? Anything?
Yeah, for sure.
You have a tool? I mean, other than your email.
Yeah, so
tool,
if it's a trend that we're seeing, if it's a crime pattern, then I will send us almost like a separate crime update or a separate email to my distribution list if it's a pattern or something that we need to be aware of crime wise. Obviously the nuisance stuff it's not the crime of the century. It's kind of kids being kids, but it is an issue and it is a nuisance. And that's why I kind of wanted the parents just to be aware of it to try to curb the problem or slow it down for sure. But as at this point, it's not gotten to the point where we're having like you said, the DUIs are hitting cars or breaking into cars. There's property damage. I haven't seen that yet. So that's why it was just more of an FYI info kind of thing.
Okay, got it. So Kimberly Bloom, then William Armistead.
Thank you, Officer Espin. I love the new background, by the way. It's super cool.
Oh, that's on my little tablet. Otherwise, it'd be the beach.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
Retro car. Okay, so this may sound a little random, but here's my question. I have long paid for a security system at my home that is monitored on an old-fashioned landline, okay? Everything is now going to a digital and Wi-Fi and whatnot. Simply Safe, all these different ones. I'm considering changing over to Simply Safe. My question to you is, without asking you to, of course, endorse a particular product, but I'm a little concerned about going to Wi-Fi because what if the grid goes down? I mean, like, have you guys noticed any increases in crime when Wi-Fi goes down? Like, are criminals that tapped in that they know that our Wi-Fi's gone down? So those of us that use Ring and Simply Safe and all these new ones are at risk. That's my question. It's kind of a weird question, but I hope that's what I'm trying to say.
I did send out a crime update a while back. I did mention that our detectives, it didn't happen in the Palisades, but our detectives did bring up the fact that they did see a couple burglaries where our suspects cut the power to the house, which completely disabled the camera system. So that is definitely something to consider and think about. Now, are there ways to kind of combat that? Yes. You can have an offsite generator that kicks on when their power goes off for emergency purposes, or if someone purposely disables the power.
Right.
But yeah, so those are kind of things to definitely think about and consider when you're getting a
Is there
security
any
system.
one system that LAPD sort of, maybe thinks is a little bit more efficient? Like in the retail environment that I work in on Abbott Kinney, we use Simply Safe, and we had an issue, the first issue actually, where people actually broke into our store at about 4 o'clock in the morning last week, and our Simply Safe cameras recorded the suspects, and we were able to file a police report, and they are on the hunt for them. So it appeared to work pretty good, but I know you're not obviously in the business of endorsing a particular.
Yeah,
but
me personally, I don't have any info or knowledge of any security system that works better than others. What I can do though is I will reach out to our burglary detectives, because they're the ones that review the footage and the cameras, and I'll ask them which ones they've seen better quality footage or better
you know what?
they have
I think
better
that would be
circumstances with, and I
yeah.
could relay that to you for sure.
That would be super helpful. I think in this day and age where everything is going digital, everything is going to Wi-Fi, I think that would be very helpful information for all of us. So thank you so much.
Sure.
That would be great. Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you, Kimberly. And William Armistead, do you have a comment or a question for Officer Espin? All right, Brian, I thank you very much for attending our meetings and staying and listening to our concerns and always addressing them. We appreciate it. Thank you for the work that you do.
Not a problem. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, you too. All right, I still have Rod and Skylar on the line. So Skylar, do you want to give us an update from Assemblymember Irwin's office?
Yeah, that would be great. I think Jake covered a lot of the Potrero and Chautauqua issues, so I won't go over that much. But a few weeks ago on April 29th, Assemblymember Irwin had a sidewalk session at Estate Coffee on Via de la Paz and got to talk to a few constituents. That was a really wonderful event, and we're hoping to do some more in the future. And then I had a second thing that is completely escaping my mind right now. I remember. PCC task force, we are getting those up and running, hopefully starting on June 8th. The task force is going to be comprised of local agencies, Sheriff's Department, the police, fire, Caltrans, et cetera, to hopefully give the community a bit of an update about what's going on PCH. So yeah, we're excited to get that going and working with Senator Allen's office to do so.
Thank you, Skylar. Yes, I sent an email a couple of weeks ago to everyone asking if we could please jumpstart those, and Skylar got right on it. So we appreciate it. Thank you. Rod, you are still on the call from Senator Ben Allen's office. I wonder if you have a state update to give us from the Senate side.
Yeah, so I think the one update I did want to give, adding to the rest of the discussion is that we hosted a emergency preparedness town hall, Senator Allen did with insurance commissioner a couple weeks ago, and we have a video of that, and it's going to be on the website by tomorrow morning. So I was hoping that it was on by tonight, so I could give you the link, but it's not up yet. So let me send that to Mariam, and hopefully we can share that. We have done several of these, and we're going to continue to have emergency preparedness town halls, either broadly speaking or specific to earthquakes or fire safety or and so on and so forth. And we do we do want to include all you for those future conversations as well. So I think that's the extent of my update. But please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. We will have a couple of legislative updates from you in the months to come, right? I think we're monitoring 1287 and SB 4, I want to say.
Right, yeah, and I think we're having offline conversations about those specific bills as well.
Okay, so when the time is right, we'll get those updates. Okay, thank you, Rod, and your team for being on the call today. Moving on this agenda. That's it for community. That's it for government offices. And then RAC representatives and advisors. The only person who might be on the call is Casey. Yep, Casey Soul. If you have an update for us, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I do have an update. I do hear an awful lot about emergency preparedness things, and I for some reason I don't sort of get the information in time to be able to communicate about it. But this Saturday is Fire Service Day, and at Fire Station 69, which is really a fun place to bring the kids, we're actually having a CERT, C-E-R-T, Community Emergency Response Team, sort of a get to know you. And it's from 10 to 2 p.m. I will forward you this information. And I also wanted to say that I've just organized another CERT training. We have now had something like 60 people since the end of the pandemic trained through in-person CERT training at the Pacific Palisades Calvary Christian Church, 701 Palisades Drive. It's a very nice room. It's firefighter taught. It's 7 weeks. You don't have to go every week. And there's a lot of different places that you can make up a course. It's free and it is so worthwhile. And I have had so many good comments on it. So I'm going to post this, but also, okay. Yeah, well, no, I'm not quite finished. So please just remember that it's the Earth's crust against us, and we have got to store some water. Please roll out the barrels. And I'm gonna, here again, I'm gonna post, I will give this to you, Marianne. Please put this on so that people understand that water is life. And the infrastructure, we all know that Sunset Boulevard is fraught when it comes to it just, boom, it just goes up anytime. And in a disaster, there's not going to be enough water, and it might be for 3 weeks. I'm recommending that everyone please consider getting a 30 or 55 or both, a 30-gallon, 2 30-gallon water barrels. You can put them in your car. There's a good place out in the valley where you can order them online, whatever. But and just do it. They last for 4 years, the water, with a preservative. Anyway, that's enough of that. So I will put this, I will send this to you, and if you wouldn't mind posting it online, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Casey. Okay, and then our last item is reports from committees. The nominating committee has a report for us tonight per the bylaws.
You ready?
Yes, thank you, Haldis. Haldis will be giving the nominating committee report.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I am Haldis Topple. I'm here tonight as a member of the PPCC Nominating Committee to announce the proposed nominees for the PPCC officers for the 2023-24 term. The lighting is changing weird, okay. The committee members are Sue Cole and Steve Crone as co-chairs, as well as Nancy Niles, Ryan Craig, and myself, Haldis Topple. Legal advisor is Rob Weber. The proposed nominees are for the second term, Chair Miriam Czar, Vice Chair Sue Cole, Treasurer Jenny Lee, and Secretary Beth Holden Garland. Miriam has already covered the upcoming dates for additional nominees and a potential candidate forum and the election, so I won't repeat that. Thank you and congratulations to all of you. I will repeat that in addition to the candidates submitted by the nominating committee, any board member may nominate a candidate or candidates until 15 minutes prior to the scheduled close of the second regular PPCC meeting in May, which will be held on May 25. Thank you.
Thank you, Haldis.
Applause, 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 applause.
Thank you, Haldis, and the nominating committee. I just want to say anyone can be nominated up to 15 minutes before the close of the next meeting. You can also self-nominate by emailing info@pacpallycc.org. You can self-nominate at the meeting. So all sorts of nominations are open between now and 15 minutes to the close of the next meeting. Chris Spitz.
Thank you so much. I really applaud these nominations. I'm not going to nominate anyone else, certainly not myself. I think it's great. I look forward to this team moving forward with PPCC if that's the case. I mean, there may be other nominations and that's fine. And maybe there'll be some fabulous nomination that we haven't even heard of. I do want to ask a question though. So Beth is going to return as recording secretary, or there's now these two positions.
Yes,
there's the corresponding secretary, which isn't a voting member. So I don't know.
Yes.
I can't remember what the bylaws say about that, you know.
Yeah, let me respond to that.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah, she's returning as the board member, and she is going to hold, go ahead, Haldis, you can respond. She's going to hold the secretary role.
The recording secretary role, yeah.
There will only be one secretary, not two.
She'll take both roles. Okay, thank you.
No,
Thank
she's
you, Beth.
in the recording secretary role. She will be part of the executive committee and she will have a vote. We have not yet appointed corresponding secretary. As you well know, Chris, we're picking up the pieces of that very large task, all of us together. Sometimes you help and I'm grateful. But Beth is returning as the voting member and the recording secretary.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, my thanks.
Thank you, Sue Cole, for stepping up also.
Yes, my thanks to the entire nominating committee and to everybody who's agreed to be nominated for the slate. Again, all positions are open until 15 minutes before the close of the next meeting. And I will have you all know we have covered this entire agenda. Congratulations at 8:10 p.m. So barring any objections, motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:10 p.m. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much and congratulations to all of you.
I have a quick announcement just before.
Andy Young, I'm so sorry. You were under officers, young man. Okay, Randy.
No, I was not lucid. No, what I'm announcing is this. It's kind of neat. And I'm a little hesitant to say it out loud. We're having the 100th anniversary of the laying of the cornerstone for the Uplifters. And there was a cartoon of the Uplifters 100 years ago, putting a time capsule into behind the plaque. Well, we City Parks opened up the time, got the box that was in the time capsule on May the 30th. We are opening it, probably demons will come out. I think it's kind of exciting. It's at 9:30 at Rustic Canyon Park, May the 30th. So
That
it's
is
kind of
fantastic.
exciting.
Very exciting. So everyone, 9:30 a.m., you can be a part of history. You can witness history
Right.
after 100 years. They're
Right.
opening the time capsule. So I suggest
Correct.
everyone goes and does that and parties a little bit with the uplifters and then go home and rest and come back to the Dracod for the birthday of Michael Amster. So that's a
There you go.
wonderful full day in the Palisades. Thank you, Randy Young.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Everyone mark your calendars, 9:30 a.m. All right. Thank you all. We are now adjourned at 8:12 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.